Morning kids. I couldn't help but notice that over the weekend Family First released this little media release, sort of panicking over the tabling of the new inquiry into cults and fringe group recommendations, claiming that it was going to be an infringement on freedom of religion. And look, here's the funny thing that I would like to share with you, and hopefully Lyle, hopefully he can get a little bit of a giggle out of this. My name's Heath-McIvor. I co-run the Australian Cult Survivors Network along with Renee Spencer and Laura McConnell-Conti and a group of other amazing advocates. We were instrumental in getting the group-based coercive control language into that report, and I'll tell you why in a second. But here's the kicker. I was a Family First candidate. Twice. This is my mugshot from the 2007 election where I think I was a Senate candidate. I don't know. I can't remember. I do remember running in 2006 for the Gippsland South. But yes, that's my cred. I was a Family First candidate. So the Beyond Belief paper that was written by my ex-husband, Patrick McIvor, myself, Renee Spencer, who is now president of Cult Information and Family Support, and the great Dr. Janja Lalich. That was actually co-designed with 64 people from the Australian Cult Survivors Network. And then there was a working group that worked really hard to get that together, and there was about 12 people in that from memory. It was then submitted to Parliament with 955 signatures. This is a huge piece of work, and Victoria is really leading the way on survivor-led legislation, because without survivor input, you can't get the full nuance. But here's the nuance that I want to point out. It's not anti-religion. It's anti-coercion. I, like Lyle Shelton, am a pastor's kid. Sadly, I am estranged from my family. But my last purchase on Amazon was this New King James Version of the Bible and the Apocrypha, including the Book of Enoch, which is fantastic. I read the Bible now more than I ever used to. And I'm not anti-religion. After leaving my high control group, or being managed out the door, and that high control group has been called a cult in media by myself and others, all of the things. After leaving, I went to a free will church, and it was hugely different, massively different. It was like a tall glass of cold water on a hot day in comparison to the iteration of faith that I'd been part of. This paper purposely acknowledged that the word cult means so much to survivors, but it means nothing to regulators. And also, freedom of religion is important. The state shouldn't be commenting on what is and what isn't appropriate belief, but it has a duty to vulnerable people. And here's the kicker. Here's the thing that I believe with all my heart. In the book of Genesis, we were given free will. If religion has to take that away in order to get people to comply, it is not free will. And that is where the whole problem lies. I've been part of some beautiful faith communities, whether that's in the church that I went to after I was managed out the door of my family of origins church. I've been in chat groups. I've podcasted with multi-faith teams. I've done lots of things that have made me realize that faith can be really, really good. In fact, the person that helped me believe in prayer after I was, gone through this whole of life rupture and was learning about the world sort of afresh was actually a Muslim. Faith can be so, so beautiful. Coercion never is. Now, the law can use coercion. It can. But it has to be authorised, and then it has to be reasonable, justified and proportional. If it's not those things, if it's not authorised, then coercion should never be used. If someone is giving their offering into the church, their tithes to the church out of free will, great. It should make them feel good that they're contributing to a cause that matters. If they're being coerced out of that, if they're, having to submit their budgets or their bank accounts to a pastor, that's different. If somebody is freely giving their confession at church, perhaps in a confessional where there's confidentiality, that's one thing, that's free will religion. If your confession is being coerced out of you in a group and there's going to be consequences for that, and there's surveillance to make sure that you are confessing if if you've done something, that's different. if you're turning up on a Sunday morning enthusiastic about going to church or contributing to church, then that's wonderful. If you're being dragged from your bed and taken to church and made to take part in a service, that's different. And there are hundreds of ways that free will religion differs, and it starts with sort of boiling the frog degree by degree, and we know this through cult literature. The state has no business telling people what to believe. And if we were to define a cult, then that would take us too close to that mark of the state deciding what is and isn't appropriate belief. They should never do that. The only constitutional protection that we have for freedom of religion in Australia is section 116 of the Constitution that says that there will never be a state religion imposed. Now, the thing that happens in these high control groups is it's not actually about faith. It's not actually about belief in Jesus. It's not actually about any of that. It's about control. It's about domination, and that's the difference. I fundamentally believe that spirituality is a beautiful thing. I fundamentally believe that community is a beautiful thing, and when those two things coincide, it can be great. It can also be awful. And what we've seen throughout the inquiry was reports of forced and coerced marriage, was reports of financial exploitation, was reports of child abuse, really, really sadly, was reports of when allegations of abuse were raised in these groups, that the group then protected the perpetrator and left the victim completely alone. And when I think about when Jesus said, "Suffer the children to come unto me," and in Old English that meant, don't forbid the children from coming to me, let them. When I think about that, I think about, what would Jesus think about churches putting doctrine over person? What would he think about churches deciding to manage abuse in-house and never offering the support that they should to, children or vulnerable people who might have suffered terrible damage in these groups? And that is why cult law reform is absolutely vital, but it must stay separate from the definition of cult, because the definition of cult takes us too close to the state actually defining what we can and can't believe, which, by the way, I just have to acknowledge, Christian nationalism is something that we need to look for in Australia, because Christian nationalism will constantly point the finger at Islam and Muslims and say, well, they'd like to bring about Sharia law and they'll make Australia into the Taliban. But if we look at what's happening over in America with that forced theocracy that's coming through MAGA, which is a cult, by the way, we actually see that the Christian Taliban is what Christian nationalism seeks to bring about. And let me just also say that Christianity and Christian nationalism, two different things. This video is too long. There's lots of context here, but hey, Lyle, one pastor's kid to another. Read the whole document. Take compassion on the people who've reported. Read every report before you go panicking over freedom of religion, because that is not the issue here. Coercion is. Group-based coercive control is. The damage, the abuse, the harm is. And for those things, Jesus would be really, really ashamed.